And so not only are we building with things that are unsustainable, we're building with things that are unhealthy, which for me really took me by surprise and really encouraged the work that we're doing today.
That's Mattie Mead, founder and CEO of Hempitecture, maker of bio-based building materials designed to replace conventional, toxic building materials. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock. And so today I'm going to talk to Mattie. I met him very briefly this summer out in Montana, but I didn't get to talk to him very much at all. So today I wanted to find out more about Hempitecture, where they've been, where they're going, and what they're all about. So I learned a lot in this conversation with Mattie Mead, and I think you will too. All right, so just a couple of things before we get into my conversation with Mattie Mead from Hempitecture. First, a shout out to our sponsor, IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana. They've been our sponsor throughout the entire year of 2021, and I am just deeply grateful for their support of what we're doing here at Lancaster Farming. So, thank you. All right, the next thing is I want to give a shout out to the folks at All Together Now, Pennsylvania, Amerishon Cast Hemp, the Hempstead, PA, and Wild Fox Provisions. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we had Eric and Cameron on talking about HempCrete Week here in Pennsylvania. And so it was this past week. I was intending on going up on Monday to the hands-on workshop up at Wild Fox Provisions. That's Ben and Kara's farm in Bartow, Pennsylvania. But it was my birthday, and so I stayed here and celebrated with my family. But Ben sent me a video later that night, and it turns out that they had gotten a cake for me. It was decorated with a little hemp leaf, and they all gathered around and sang to me. So very special, and so I just want to give a shout out to Judy Wicks and Cameron McIntosh, Eric Titus White, Ben and Kara Davies, and the whole crew. Really a special group of people that I am very grateful that I have gotten to know through this podcast. And so what better way to celebrate not only my birthday, but HempCrete Week than with a conversation with one of the pioneers of HempCrete, Mattie Mead from Hempitecture in Idaho. So here we go. Mattie Mead from Hempitecture, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, Eric, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be on the show, especially as a fan of the show.
Well, that's cool. Thank you for saying that. So let's have an introduction. Tell me who you are and how you got into this hemp business.
Oh, gosh. Well, first off, my name is Mattie Mead. I'm the founder and CEO of Hempitecture. And I said, oh, gosh, because how did I get into this industry and in this space? And it's a bit of a story. And so if you'll let me indulge me in sharing that story. And it really goes back to, gosh, at this point, many years ago. It was 2012. I was an undergraduate student studying architecture and environmental sciences. Went to a pretty small liberal arts college in upstate New York called Hobart College. And it's in this really beautiful kind of picturesque setting overlooking one of the Finger Lakes in the Finger Lakes wine region of New York. Mm-hmm. Well, this region has a lot going for it, but historically it's been a little bit economically depressed. And so in my 4 years of time at Hobart College, I saw a mountain grow in the distance. And that mountain was far from a natural mountain. It was a mountain of waste. One of the largest super landfills in the Northeast was in Seneca Falls, New York. So about a 15-20 minute drive from where my school's campus was. And it really just kind of intrigued me. I wondered what was going into this landfill and what is the effect that this landfill has on us and on our environment. I mean, you could certainly smell it some days of the week when the wind was blowing just right. And I was pretty blown away to find out that the landfill was actually, of course, municipal waste, food waste, things like that. But a good portion of the waste that was going into this landfill was construction and demolition waste. And it awoke me, to the idea that buildings at their end of life don't have a solution. They just go to a landfill. They create these mountains all over the United States, and those mountains being landfills. And so I became really interested in the idea of buildings, building materials, and circularity. How can a building material be returned to the earth and not contribute to this problem? And so towards my senior year of college, while I was finishing out my architecture degree and also my environmental sciences minor, I decided to do a thesis study that combined really this interest in the built environment, the natural world, and architecture. And the title of this research project that I did was The Contemporary Relevance of Earth Architecture. I was kind of already operating under the assumption that earth architecture, meaning building materials made from the earth, are more sustainable than building materials that are not from the earth and building materials that don't biodegrade. And so in this study, I began looking at different regions of the world and really wanted to know, what were people doing before the Industrial Revolution? How did indigenous people build their homes? How did people build their homes in various locations using various materials? And it was in this research that I found out about hemp and limestone being used as a building material in France. Now, at the time, I didn't really know a whole lot about industrial hemp, yet the reading that I came across and the information that I came across really struck me right off the bat. And I think I read something about some homes or a couple buildings in France, and I think I rushed to my architecture advisor's office and I said, okay, time out. I am going to totally redo this study, and I'm going to focus it all on industrial hemp as a building material. I was excited about it, and they were like, perhaps you should rethink that. I don't, maybe you should just continue with what you're already doing and figure out a way to channel your interest in this building material. But their perspective was, maybe it's so new and maybe there's not enough information out there to fully do a thesis study on it. Mm-hmm. So I kind of continued with the path of doing this sort of all-encompassing study that looked at straw bale, cob, wattle and daub, and of course hempcrete and a variety of other natural building methods. And to channel that excitement and energy that I had for industrial hemp as a building material, I decided to dabble in some of the entrepreneurship programs at my school. And it was very early on that before I even knew what Hempitecture was or would be, I actually came up with the name Hempitecture. I was doing an internship, and I was with this entrepreneurial mentor of mine working for his company that was basically a green roof company in New York City. So it was pretty cool. We got to go see some really neat buildings and kind of bring nature to the urban landscape. And so he had this sustainability ethos, and he was someone that I kind of trusted. And, I don't want to say I was laughed at right off the bat when I said to my professors that I want to research and build with industrial hemp. But I told this trusted mentor of mine, said, hey, so I've got this idea and I've learned about this from my studies, and I saw that in France they're doing this. And what do you think about the name? It's like hemp architecture combined together, Hempitecture. And he looked at me and he said, you should trademark that. And so not long after, one of the first things I did was I trademarked Hempitecture. Well, to kind of move forward in the story, I trademarked Hempitecture. I was working with the entrepreneurial department of my school, and I started to create a startup concept around hemp building materials, which that startup concept, as it existed in 2012, is very, very different than the business exists today. But it really began in 2012, 2013, 5 or 6 years before the federal farm bill. So it goes a ways back, and I like to think that since that moment, I've really continually been learning. I've never stopped learning. And Eric, that's how we met when we were in Montana not that long ago.
Right,
I
right.
was seeing fields and learning about how industrial hemp is grown and processed, because in this space, there's so much new and so many things are evolving that learning needs to continue to happen.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's a great origin story. Thank you for sharing that. And you're right about the construction industry. It's just so wasteful. You go to a job site and there's the roll-off dumpster of just all kinds of stuff in there, mostly plastic, and they throw all that stuff in, like the new building stuff. But you're also talking about, end of life of existing buildings, just so much waste.
Exactly. Not only is it wasteful, Eric, it's also toxic, and that is the other thing that really struck me as I dug into this issue further. Sure, we have building materials that are natural. Of course, wood is one of the most widely used building materials, but things like insulation, things like carpet underlayment, things like paint, these materials, especially when they're new, they off gas and they release toxins into our environment. And so not only are we building with things that are unsustainable, we're building with things that are unhealthy, which for me really took me by surprise and really encouraged the work that we're doing today.
Okay, well, let's talk about that work. What is Hempitecture today? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I think to kind of frame what we're doing today, it's helpful to understand and capture where we came from.
Okay.
The early 2012, 2013 me was really fascinated, and I still am today, so don't get me wrong, but the early 2012, 2013 me was really fascinated with hempcrete, or hemp and lime. To this day, I still believe that hemp and lime are quite possibly the most sustainable way of building a home, bar none. I mean, I have not found a system or strategy or material that quite compares to hempcrete. It really is remarkable. And the earliest concept of hempitecture in 2012 and 2013 was actually an interlocking, insulating building block system. So really, it was a product concept. Well, I learned pretty early on that to have a product concept and to be pitching this idea of a new building material, it really does require a few things. It requires capital, first and foremost, which as a college student on scholarship, I had none of. It requires manufacturing space and prototyping, which of course goes back to number one, requires money, which I had none of. And then it also requires really an addressable market. Who out there is going to buy these products? And why would you create a product for a market that isn't requesting it or doesn't want it? Well, it occurred to me early on that education was really key. And then also creating examples of hempcrete houses was really key to get people aware of the benefits of this material. So in that 2012, 2013 undergraduate architecture world of really promoting and pitching this concept of building blocks, I didn't get very far. I presented at business plan competitions. I ultimately, stood up on stage in front of 100, one time in front of about 300 people, pitching to venture capital judges, and was laughed at. People said, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. You're trying to build houses out of a Schedule I substance." And my belief was, well, I want to be on the ground floor of this industry that is evolving. I want to be here and working on this before it's legal, because it will become legal. We can look to almost every other nation in the world to understand that. But it brought me and subsequently us as the team evolved and new people came into the team, brought us to on-site construction. Really early on, we were more or less a traveling hempcrete construction company. I had the good fortune of being connected with some folks here in Idaho, which is currently my home, who called me out of the blue one day and they said, "Hey, do you want to come build some of these hempcrete buildings you're talking about?" I don't think I even had a website at the time, so I was pretty surprised by this, but through the power of social media, they actually found out about this pitch contest I was in and said, "Hey, we want you to prototype and experiment with hempcrete on our property." So I moved out to Idaho and built first hempcrete building. That hempcrete building turned into another, and to date, we've had a hands-on role in about 10 hempcrete projects, and we've supplied probably 25 to 35 hempcrete projects
Oh,
across the
wow.
United States, which when I started in 2012, I think there was fewer than five. So we're really excited about, how we've become entrenched in the hempcrete industry, but it has brought us to today. And we had sort of a pivot point, almost an aha moment a few years ago.
Right on. Before we get to that, tell me about some of those early buildings that was all cast in place.
Yeah, correct. So actually, the first building project we worked on was really unique in that it was a prefabricated, pre-panelized hempcrete building. And as far as we're aware, was the first of that kind in North America and was the first commercial hempcrete building in the United States. Prior to that, all the other hempcrete buildings were residences. And really, the idea of building a commercial public use building was that people could come to this space, this building, this land that the building was on, and learn about sustainability, learn about natural building materials. That idea of panelization ultimately came from, at the time, my obsession with this idea of making hempcrete easy and scalable. Of course, if you can't make building blocks, what's the next best way to make a hempcrete building efficient and easy to build? From our point of view, that was panels. And so we kind of actually skipped the step initially of cast in place, although cast in place, which just for the listeners who aren't super familiar with, cast in place just refers to mixing and batching the hempcrete on site and installing it into form boards, generally around a wooden frame. So we did kind of skip that first step of cast in place, although the panels themselves were essentially cast in place, but they were cast horizontally. So we did not have to fight gravity in the conventional sense of other casts in place. But after that, Idaho Base Camp Project, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, really dedicated to promoting sustainability and living in balance with the environment. We worked on a number of projects from Washington to upstate New York to Texas, and those have all been cast in place,
Okay.
which is a great strategy, but definitely labor intensive,
For
Eric.
sure. So before we get to the pivot you mentioned, just let's go over some of the benefits of building with hemp.
Yes.
Like what drew you in? What was, besides its sort of sustainable and environmentally friendly aspect, what else about it?
One of the things that really appealed to me early on about hempcrete was the fact that hempcrete is a replacement for multiple other materials. It is your insulation, it's essentially your drywall, there's no vapor barrier required. So, from that point of view, to me, it seemed like a simpler, more pure approach to building. What appealed to me after I kind of dug in even further was the health benefits: non-toxic, no VOCs, no off-gassing. And then transcending from those health benefits are really the performance benefits. One thing that is amazing about hempcrete is it is 100% fireproof, which we actually conclusively proved with an ASTM E84 test a couple of years ago. So that's a really amazing benefit. And some of the other benefits are its vapor permeability, essentially, which means the ability for the wall to hold moisture or vapor and release it, which for you translates to a more comfortable indoor air environment. When I can build a house one day, Eric, if I'm ever so blessed enough, it will be a cast in place hempcrete house.
So you mentioned the pivot. Where are you now with Hempitecture?
Yeah, so a few years ago, we kind of had a light bulb moment, really almost akin to the early light bulb moment of, wow, what an incredible opportunity industrial hemp building materials are for the United States. And we were really focused on hempcrete and scaling hempcrete. We had invested a lot of money into how can we scale hempcrete by buying equipment, using technology to augment the labor intensiveness. Yet what we found was that hempcrete projects were expensive and they tend to come in over budget because of that labor intensity. And at this point in time, my co-founder, Tommy Gibbons, and I were really, trying to envision the future of Hempitecture and where we were going. And we were putting in 2x the effort and really doubling down on hempcrete, yet not really getting 2x out. And so what that made us realize is that maybe there is a different pathway forward that is maybe just a slight deviation off the original plan, which was to really, bring to scale and commercialize hempcrete building materials in the United States. Maybe there's alternative methods or ways. And so, almost full circle, like going back to that idea of like taking in what's happening elsewhere in the world. We were looking at some companies that were based in Germany and France and Scotland that were manufacturing sustainable insulation products using natural fibers as well as animal fibers, wool in particular. And so what we realized was that in looking at insulation products that are really a one-to-one substitution, there is a much greater potential for market adoption. And the reason that there is more potential for market adoption of a hemp insulation product over a hemp lime or hempcrete system is that hempcrete or hemp lime is a system. It's not just a one-to-one replacement. It requires working with the architects, the clients, the contractors early on before the house is even, built or a shovel touches the soil to ensure that the design and the functionality of the building is ready to be suited to and accommodate hempcrete. We had some heartbreakers, Eric. We had projects that, we had months of our calendar blocked out for that we were going to go build in certain locations. And, maybe it got to the seventh inning and then the building inspector said, sorry, you can't do this because this isn't a recognized building material. Or we had a client or two who, had gotten really far in the planning stages, designed their house around hempcrete and realized that when the numbers came together, this wasn't financially feasible. And so it really left us in a difficult place. And in fact, in 2019, left us in a place where we weren't sure if Hempitecture would continue to be a business any longer. We had been burned, we had had some setbacks, we, really had some growing pains and challenges in trying our best in earnest to pioneer an industry that was very much so nascent. And so in, reflecting on these experiences, we said we need to focus on a one-to-one product substitution, not a system. Now, again, I do want to reiterate the fact that we really do still earnestly and wholeheartedly believe in hempcrete. If you go to hempitecture.com, you'll still see information about hempcrete. We still supply hemp core. We recently developed a US manufactured lime binder to bind together hempcrete that's actually manufactured here in Idaho. We're still very much so working in this space, yet we have pivoted and shifted our focus to manufacturing insulation using hemp fiber. That is where our focus lies today.
Okay, well, tell me about that. So like a one-to-one replacement for fiberglass, like bats insulation, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Eric. The product name that we trademarked for this concept is called HempWool, which is 90% hemp fiber, 10% binder, and is made through a non-woven process. Non-wovens are a really largely encompassing industry, or I should say field, I suppose. And a lot of things are non-wovens, and we interact with them on a daily basis. The manufacturing facility that we are currently building in southern Idaho is designed to manufacture lofty insulation. So when I say lofty, just think of thick. And with that thickness, it traps air in it, which makes it a good insulator. It is used in lieu of fiberglass, spray foam, mineral wool, really the conventional insulation products that are out there. And we are continuing to target and focus on the residential and commercial housing sectors for our products. Yet we're also looking at some other industries and ways that we can incorporate more sustainable alternatives into those industries. The equipment that we've actually already purchased from Italy is really versatile. It can create lots of products. and we're really excited about this next step in this next chapter, which is a big step forward for Hempitecture. And to be completely honest, a step a bit out of our comfort zone. We have grown the market for HempWool here in the United States by selling an imported product that we've branded and sold as HempWool. And now we're transitioning to US manufacturing. And there's some ramifications of that. There's some exciting elements of that. Yet there's also some things that it's a big deal. And we realize we're biting off a lot here, but we're excited about these next steps.
Because you have to build a supply chain essentially out of nothing, right?
Well, fortunately for us, there's other folks who really are working on the supply chain. And I don't think that we'd be having this conversation today, Eric, and talking about our nonwovens manufacturing facility if it were not for other folks out there that are really putting these supply chain pieces together. I&D Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, of course, comes to mind. And yet there's other companies across the United States in Colorado and Nebraska that are working on developing a supply chain. They're working with the farmers. They're getting seeds in the ground. They're buying that material from the farmers, and then they're processing it. Well, all that is essential and super important to our business, and we need those folks and that section of the supply chain to exist. Yet at the same time, those folks also will become I don't want to say reliant on Hempitecture, but will benefit from Hempitecture as a buyer.
Sure.
The volume that we're projecting and purchasing is significant. And so we can help ensure that a company like I&D Hemp or the other processors that are emerging out there have customers. It really does require this circular supply chain. And I would not go so far as to say that we're responsible for developing all of it. We're maybe responsible for developing a part of it and being a part of that value chain. But much gratitude and thanks has to go to those folks that are out there really getting those seeds in the ground and working with the farmers.
Right. Yeah. Because this is great news for farmers, because like ever since I've started this podcast, they're like, well, who's going to buy it if I grow it? Why would I grow it if there's no market? And so what you're talking about is the establishment of a big market, which is good news.
That's exactly right, Eric. It's spot on.
If I am, building a house and I'm comparing prices between fiberglass insulation and the hemp insulation, where is it like price point wise? Is it competitive?
Eric, that's kind of the elephant in the room right now, and it's something that we're actively working on addressing. If our product that we were selling by importing was a comparable price to fiberglass or the other conventional insulation products out there, we would not be building a manufacturing facility here in the United States. We are incurring really huge investment costs, huge for us at least, investment costs in building out this facility. And there's quite some time until we break even and receive payback on that facility. And we are doing this really to drive down the cost, support the US supply chain, and create a product that is closer to parity. Now, fiberglass is it's extremely inexpensive. We view the next closest analogous product to our product as rock wool, and we are seeking to be within 10 to 15% price parity of rock wool, so that when you're comparing A to B, maybe A is rock wool and B is hemp wool, you're seeing a similar price. Yet then you go to the value added benefits, and hemp wool meets or exceeds the benefits of option A. Price parity is very important for us and is how we ultimately will drive scale. At this point in time, we're looking at 2x the cost of conventional insulation products, which is really limiting to the market. And a lot of folks come to us and they say, we're really motivated to use this product. You get to the checkout step, you find out the shipping costs, and that motivation dissipates quickly. And so our manufacturing facility here in the United States is an earnest effort at lowering that cost while also strengthening the supply chain here in particularly the American West.
And I imagine you're also shrinking your carbon footprint, right? Because if you're shipping stuff from France or wherever, there's a lot of energy costs in moving this stuff.
That's exactly correct. And we are often asked why Idaho. Idaho was the 50th state to legalize industrial hemp, I believe. So quite literally the last to the party, if you will. Yet Idaho is really strategically located for us amongst really what could kind of be considered the breadbasket of industrial hemp cultivation in the West. So big players in Montana, Alberta is really, they're cultivating a lot of acreage. The industry there is growing. There's new processors emerging in Alberta. Idaho is just south of Alberta, just west of Montana. And then, of course, states like Oregon, Washington, Colorado, are all within this radius of where our manufacturing facility is located. If you are in Colorado, spare, perhaps a mountain pass or two. If you are trying to get west of the Rocky Mountains and head to the West Coast, you need to go north and then west through Idaho on Interstate 84. It runs east-west through Idaho, and that is where our facility is positioned. So, we looked at a lot of locations. We looked at being right by one of the largest processors in Montana. We looked at Nevada. We looked at California. We looked even into Oregon and more western Oregon, closer to the coast. And we settled on Idaho because of that strategic location and allows us to, as you had said before, lower the carbon footprint of the transportation costs. If we're sourcing from a 10-hour radius, and within that 10-hour radius, there are a plethora of processors, that's a huge win for the processors and us. And then, of course, Idaho is further south than where some of these processors are. And our material, which is bulky, voluminous, and therefore expensive to ship, and believe it or not, we're closer to the markets in which we intend to serve. So there's environmental benefits, there's economic benefits, and then supply chain benefits as well.
Good. So you mentioned Fort Benton, Montana. That's where we met each other out there this summer.
That's right.
What has changed for you since that historic day in Montana?
Oh, that was such a great day. And that day that Eric's alluding to was I&D Hemp's Field Day, where we got to go see really the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, it's been tough in the American West with severe drought, grasshoppers, and I&D Hemp is really learning and working through these challenges to help build this supply chain that will be reliable. At that point in time, we had not closed on our facility yet. Our fundraising was still in progress. There were still a lot of unknowns. We hadn't finalized a purchase contract with our global OEM, that is original equipment manufacturer. And now all of those pieces have really been set in place. We've surpassed our fundraising goal and are actually seeking to raise some more funding. We have closed on our facility contract in Jerome, Idaho, which is where our facility is located. We finalized our equipment purchase order with the global manufacturer of the nonwovens equipment we are purchasing. A lot of things have fallen into place since then. Yet, with all those things that fall into place, I like to think that another thing emerges, or another thing that you didn't realize that's right around the corner pops up. And so there's always more work to be done. And that's one thing that really, I think, motivates myself and the Hempitecture team, is that we wake up, we go to work, and we know there's a lot to do. We're working in a space that, at least in the United States, there's not a game plan for. We're not the first people to, create hemp insulation, certainly not. Yet we're some of the first to really take a run at commercializing this in the United States and develop this. And we're being supported on high levels to do that. We're being supported by the Department of Energy. My business partner received a fellowship to represent Hempitecture at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, a Department of Energy and Building Technologies office funded research and development program. We're we've received funding from Idaho, believe it or not. Not long after Idaho legalized industrial hemp, they granted $206,000 to Hempitecture and our research team at the University of Idaho to research and develop hemp insulation here in Idaho. So
That's awesome.
a lot of things are falling into place. There's always more to be done, Eric. We're not claiming to be the first, but we really hope that our establishment, our business helps strengthen the supply chain. And ultimately, at the end of the day, for us, it all goes back to the farmers. If we're successful, we're buying product. If we're buying product, the processor is successful. If the processor is successful, farmers have a place to sell their material.
So what's your plan for reaching, like the non-hemp people, just like the everyday customer who's looking for insulation?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Eric. And actually, to date, we have never spent anything on marketing except for just our time. We've got a pretty fun, I like to think it's fun, social media presence, and we post lots of great photos and videos and information and share what other people are doing. Our website, of course, but we have never spent a dollar on outbound marketing, which I think is a testament to the interest that's growing in this space of sustainable, natural, plant-based materials, not just building materials, but plant-based things as a whole. Who would have thought, Burger King would sell an Impossible burger, a meat-free burger? And so I do think that this is a trend that is coming into vogue. And I also think it's a trend that, unlike other trends, is not going to go away. It's going to become entrenched as the norm. But we do need to reach larger audiences. We do need to reach and market to builders and architects and developers, folks that industrial hemp or hemp is not part of their vocabulary, yet they're decision makers in the building materials space. And so to do that, we have a few kind of strategies in hand. We'll probably increase our presence at trade shows and networking with sort of just building industry and building material professionals this year and over the coming years. And we intend to utilize some unique distribution channels that I don't think have really been utilized within the space that we're working with. We're really interested in partnering with folks in the modular space. Modular building is a hugely growing segment that I believe, and as someone who's worked on site and framed houses with my hands using nailers and all the tools that you have to use to build a house, it's inefficient. There's a lot of money wasted in on-site construction. So I think we're going to see more of the prefabricated world coming into play. And we want to partner with companies that are in that space and supply them large volumes of insulation so that our biggest customers are repeat customers that are buying on a pre-specified contract basis. But outside of that, we developed a new platform to serve, people like you and me, Eric, who maybe are working on a at-home project or maybe are just, interested in buying small amounts of insulation. And this solution that we created for the sort of business to consumer route or B2C route is called our Buy Direct platform, where you can, log on to our website. Eric's, renovating his garage and he's calculated he needs 600 square feet of insulation. You enter in 600 square feet, your stud spacing and the depth of your stud, and it'll kick back an estimate for you that says, hey, Eric, you need 2 pallets of this product. What's your shipping address? We'll pull a shipping quote for you. Kind of like when you go on vacation and you're looking for the best deal and you use Kayak or Google Flights or something like that.
Yeah.
And it gives you this airline or that airline. Well, this does the same exact thing, but it does it with less than truckload shipping, LTL shipping. And so you can actually get a delivered to quote to your door for HempWool insulation. And so in that vein, we're really making it easier than ever before to buy a commodity or a material that you would have had to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. And so maybe it's the millennials that's in us to upend a conventional model of distribution and sales with in favor of technology, but we view this as a technology in its own right that can make people's lives easier. So that's how we intend to reach more folks on that end.
Speaking as a Generation Xer, we are really counting on you millennials. But yeah, I saw those calculators on your website at hempitecture.com, and they look really easy to use and very helpful.
Great. Yeah, thanks. And we're welcome to feedback. It is kind of in a beta phase. If you go to buy.hempitecture.com, you can access the BDP, the Buy Direct platform directly. But of course, you can always go to hempitecture.com and get an estimate for your project, at least see what it costs. And maybe you can see the now and then see the later. Because right now, as we discussed, our prices are higher, but we are working on solving that.
Right on. So 10, 15 years ago, I worked as a residential electrician. So I spent a lot of time in attics and crawl spaces and just covered in fiberglass insulation. So just from like the electrician in me, super exciting to have hemp insulation, right? That's a game changer.
What we found, Eric, is that everyone who comes in contact with hemp wool, it is better for them. And the reason for that is because it's non-itchy, non-abrasive, non-toxic. So as a tradesperson who's working in the house or working, opening up the walls or climbing through the attic, you don't have to worry about being itchy with hemp wool. That's a huge benefit to it.
Breathing fiberglass in. Yeah, no thanks. So cool. That's exciting. Mattie Mead, it's really great to talk to you today.
Eric, thanks so much for having me. Really nice to meet you in Montana a few months back, and it's a pleasure to be here on your show. And for all the listeners out there, feel free to friend me or connect with me on LinkedIn, and would love to learn more about what you're working on. And always feel free to visit our website, hempitecture.com, where you can find more information on what we're doing and where we're going.
Awesome. Sounds great, Mattie. Thank you so much for your time today. And maybe I'll see you next year in Montana.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Eric, and really great to chat with you today.
All right, and just like that, it's over. Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out lancasterfarming.com for the show page for this episode, for all the relevant links to Hempitecture. And also, don't forget about the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. I will be moderating a panel on the opening day, so I hope to see you there. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. But again, don't take my word for it. Check it out yourself. Get yourself a subscription. Check us out online, lancasterfarming.com. You can always get in touch with me by email. Send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com or give me a call. Just call me up, 717-721-4462. All right, until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Episode 163 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. The show was written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock, and any music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.